The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Effective immediately, my administration is recognizing gold standard childhood vaccine recommendations for only 11 core vaccinations against the most serious and dangerous diseases, along with the MMR, which hopefully will be split up. You have the MMR. We want it in 3 separate vaccinations, given at separate times. Together, there could be a possibility they're quite lethal, and separately, it looks like they are not at all lethal, but just very effective. So the MMR, we want to have separate visits, separate times. The vaccine being broken into 3 separate single doses, and vaccines being administered in separate visits.
Good morning, CHD. It is Wednesday, the 12th of August, 2026. We're live here at CHD TV. The clip that you just saw is a huge moment for parents around the world, parents like myself, who have been shouting out for years that the MMR combined vaccine caused untold damage to our children, but not just for us, the parents, also to Andrew Wakefield. So he's here this morning. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning, Paul. It's a brand new day.
The brand new day. Did you ever think in our lifetime that we would get to this? Because what actually people don't understand, what actually just happened is he basically said the MMR is causing untold damage to our children. That's why they want to split it out.
Paul, you know, I'm a pathological optimist, but I really couldn't see this out. Just came out of the blue. So I was surprised and delighted. Yeah,
now let's talk, because on CHD TV, Andy, we have a lot of young, new people. Our data says that a lot of 18 to 35-year-olds are watching CHD TV. Now, they may not know who you are. We know who you are. So can you just tell us, go back a bit and tell us the history of how you got to where you are now?
Sure. Right. 28 years ago, we were presented with, in fact, over that, 30 years ago, we were presented with a group of children who had been developmentally normal and had regressed into autism, had developed severe gastrointestinal distress, and presented to me as a gastroenterologist. And my duty was to have those children investigated to exclude some sort of bowel inflammation. I knew nothing about autism. And many of the children, many of the parents said that their child had regressed from being perfectly normal developmentally to autism following the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. And I had an obligation to take that very seriously. So long story short, I thought, well, if I'm going to get involved in this, I really need to understand. I really need to look at the background as an academic physician. So what I did is I produced a 250-page report for myself on all of the pre-licensing studies that have been performed on measles-containing vaccines, measles, single measles, the measles rubella vaccine that have been used in the UK, and the MMR. And I found they were totally inadequate to proclaim the safety of the vaccine. And that's since been endorsed by many people, including Secretary Kennedy. And concerned about this, and the fact that we were publishing this paper, I went to Dr. David Salisbury at the Department of Health. And I said, there have been no appropriate comparative studies between the single measles vaccine and the MMR. Why not? Where are they? I'm missing them. And his answer to me was, we had no reason to assume that the safety of the triple vaccine would be any different from that of the single vaccine. You have absolutely no right to make that kind of assumption on behalf of every child in the country born beyond that point, and by proxy, many, many children around the world. Absolutely no right. If I gave you 3 antihypertensive, 3 blood pressure drugs at one time, I'd kill all my patients. I'd kill everybody who received that. You cannot put 3 things together in combination, particularly live viruses, and assume, which they had done, assume that it would be no more dangerous than the single vaccine. And I was absolutely astonished, and I was very critical of him on that. And I then, when it came to the release of the paper in 1998, I said to my colleagues, and I said to the dean of the medical school, this is my position. I've done all this research, and I'm very concerned that the safety studies for the MMR vaccine have not been done. We only saw this upward inflection in the rate of autism in the UK with the introduction of the MMR. We didn't see it before this with the use of the single vaccine. So I went to, what happened next was that within 6 months of my making that recommendation, that parents should opt for the single vaccines, which were available in the UK and the US at that time, that parents might consider opting for the single vaccines. What happened is the UK stopped the importation, banned the importation license of the single vaccine, single measles vaccine. And in the States, it seemed that Merck unilaterally decided that it was our way or no way, and remove the option of the single measles vaccine. So parents were left with no choice. And I went to Dr. Elizabeth Miller, who is the head of what is the equivalent of the CDC in the UK. And I said, why would you do that? Why would you, if parents are concerned about the safety of MMR, justifiably, why would you take away the option of the single vaccine? And she said, if we permitted parents the choice, it would destroy our MMR program. In other words, her concerns were not for the health of children, but for the welfare of their program. And moreover, Paul, just to go a little further, I looked into the data, the scientific data, and found that there were clinical laboratory studies that showed that when the three were put together in one vaccine, there was what was called interference, immune interference between the viruses and the component vaccine. So the measles component in particular changed the immune response to the mumps component. The implications for safety of this interference were completely unknown, and they were completely ignored. They were brushed to one side. So that's where we are now. So when I hear Paul Offit go on a blog yesterday or on the news saying that it's safe and effective and there's no evidence of a problem, yes, there is, Paul. You are speaking from a position of ignorance. So that's the situation we're faced with at the moment. And until we have safety studies that exonerate the MMR vaccine, certainly in the context of autism and neurodevelopmental disorders, then parents most certainly should not only have the choice of whether to vaccinate their child or not, but how to do so using the single vaccines as an option.
Andy, what has been the cost of them not listening to you for the MMR continuing for 28 years, for the injury? I mean, goodness, I mean, if you'd said that and I'd heard you, Billy would not be where he is today. So what is the cost? How many children do we think have been injured over the years because they shut you down?
Gosh, Paul, we're talking about millions, globally, millions and millions of children. It's difficult to quantify. The costs come in two forms. There's obviously the financial cost, but there's the physical and emotional cost that goes with it as well. One is potentially quantifiable, that is the financial cost, and that you can break down into the direct care costs for these young people who've been permanently injured, who are going to need lifelong care, particularly when their parents are gone. And this is going to be hugely expensive for the taxpayer. Beyond that, there's the cost of litigation, for example. People knew that this was going on. They didn't do adequate safety studies. There has been fraud in the setting of vaccines and MMR in particular, William Thompson study. And there is every opportunity or every right of parents to seek compensation for their damaged children. And that's going to be a huge contingent cost. There's the loss of these otherwise healthy individuals and their siblings who will go on to care for them from the workplace. So a huge loss of taxpayer revenue coming into the government. So you can see it operates on many levels. And then there is the unquantifiable cost, both emotionally and physically, the suffering of these children and their families that has gone largely ignored, except for people like yourself and CHD over the years.
And Andy, this is important because you're a scientist and you've studied this, but you've also spoken to countless, I don't know how many parents you've spoken to around the world for years at conferences. They would flood to you and tell you their story. And it's the same story over and over again. And Brian Hooker always says, our chief scientific officer always says, we the people are the real science.
Yes, we are, and you've exemplified that through the vaxxed films, 2, 3, etc., showing that the story that we should not have ever ignored and cannot continue to ignore from the parents and the mothers in particular really says what we need to know. Everything when I got involved in this polls initially, I was confronted by two competing sets of opinions. There were the experts, the autism experts, and then there were the mothers. The autism experts were wrong on practically every single count. The mothers were right. We should have listened to them a long time ago. Governments didn't listen, and that's why we are where we are now. Fortunately, with Secretary Kennedy in position and Trump in the White House, things have changed. Long overdue, but they have changed.
Andy, so we know now from this announcement that the trolls, the other side, are going to come in super hard. And one of the things they say over and over again, the science is settled, the science is clear. We've done 100 million studies on this, and vaccines do not cause autism. Yet here we are with the MMR now being split up for a good reason. And talk to us about that for a second. Because
let me read you this paper. This is from Nick Hulscher. This is the latest scientific study by Peter McCullough, Nick Hulscher and colleagues. 79 pages, 308 references, and looked at and analyzed 136 papers that purport to look at the association between vaccines and autism. Their conclusion is this. This is the latest science. Combination and early time routine childhood vaccination constitutes the most significant modifiable risk factor for autism spectrum disorder. That is a summary of the science. That is what I asked for all those years ago, and that is what has now been delivered, and there it is. That's what the science says. Was that picked up in CNN's attack on Bobby Kennedy the other day when they claimed it to be safe and effective? No, absolutely not. That science was completely ignored. Peer-reviewed science, there it is. That is where we are at the moment.
Andy, so let's just talk about one other thing, and that is by splitting up the MMR, we're thrilled that Trump has, and obviously Secretary Kennedy, have come out and said that we have to do this, because basically what he's saying is that there's a problem with the MMR. So put that aside for a second. Now we have a situation where the single measles, mumps, and rubella are going to be available at some point. We are not for a second saying that those are safe, especially with the new mRNA technology coming out. There is grave concern, rightly, about these.
Absolutely. And there should be, and again, for all of the vaccines on the routine childhood schedule, the safety studies have not been done. That is the long-term randomized placebo-controlled studies. And that's been pointed out time and time again. They have not been done, and therefore it is untenable to say that these vaccines are safe. You cannot say they're safe. You introduce something new onto the market and it is dangerous until proven otherwise. It has to make the case for its own safety, and that has not happened.
Well, so Andy, they tried to shut you down. They did everything they could to shut you down, take away your job, take away your life, all that kind of stuff. But you wouldn't stay quiet. And thank you for that. And so you made the Vax film and subsequent other films after. So go through that and tell us to where you are now with your new book and hopefully movie to be.
Thank you very much, Paul. My latest book, which was written as a screenplay years ago. It's an extraordinary story of a mother's love for her child. And it's called The Bequest. It's come out now. It's on the Amazon bestseller list. Please buy it. I want to make this into a film. And the way we approached this was to produce it as a book first and foremost, get attention to it. It's much cheaper to produce a book than it is to make a movie. But that's my aim, is to highlight for the world this crucial question that you raised in the senatorial, the Ron Johnson's hearing, and that what happens to our children, our injured children, when we are no longer there to care for them. An absolutely crucial question that haunts millions of parents around the world every night. What happens to my child when I am no longer there, because the world does not understand them, does not care for them, and does not love them as I do? And that has got to change. And so that's what the purpose of the Bequest is, to bring attention to that. We have a book reading sponsored by Texans for Vaccine Choice in Buda in Texas, south of Austin, on the 22nd. So I will be there talking about the book and doing a reading. So please come along. We'd love to see you there.
And now, Andy, also people can follow you for latest updates. I highly recommend to all our viewers, please follow Andy's organization on, I follow you on Instagram because I'm still banned from Facebook, but tell everybody where they can follow you. There you are on Instagram. And you really do. You've got a fantastic social media girl, Emmy, and she really does blast out up-to-date stuff on what's happening with you and your work.
Yeah, please go to thebequest.co, not .com, .co, .co, thebequest.co, and all the films are available there, the books available there, and notices of notifications of events upcoming are there as well.
So Andy, since this news broke, I have been inundated with parents, many of who you know because you've met them over the year, wanting me to thank you today for standing firm, never backing down for our children. And you've been so steadfast and had so much attack. Yet here you are today to hear this news, and we're so grateful to you. And, if you remember, I know you know Billy, and we were told Billy would never speak or live a life with purpose after his injury. So yesterday I told him this has happened, and he has a message for you. We're going to play it right now.
Thank you for destroying the MMR. Thank you very, very much, Andy Wakefield. And thank you, Andy Wakefield, for destroying the MMR. We love you. Jesus loves you. We love you.
I love you too, Billy. Thank you very much.
Of course, naked Billy in the Texas heat. But I do want you to know that he stands for, Alison Edwards said, her son Jonathan can't speak. And the messages are coming in to you from us, the parents and mothers, saying, thank you. Thank you for seeing it to the end and continue to doing this work on behalf of our children. And now, with the Bequest, you're taking up the next subject that's dear to our hearts. Where are our children going to go when we, the parents, are no longer around? So, Andy, again, on behalf of the mothers particularly and the parents out there, there are no words to thank you for everything you've done.
Oh, I couldn't say no. You were there bullying me all the time, telling me what to do. So anyway, no, it's been an honor, and it's not over. We must keep fighting.
No. And so my final question to you is, now what do we do? Because this is an announcement, and of course the arrows are going to come. So what do we, the parents, do? Obviously stand up, tell our stories, keep going strong. But what else can we do to make sure this continues?
Don't worry about the arrows. Never, never, never surrender. And we are winning. But this will change from the bottom up, polls. You know that. It won't change from the top down. This executive order is a huge step forward, but it keeps it in the public eye. And that's the crucial thing. And that's the thing that Paul Offit and people like him really hate, is it's in the public eye. Questions are being asked. In the end, it will be one from the bottom up, from parents saying, we no longer trust you. We listened to the Fauci hearings. We listened to the lies that were told. We listened to the obfuscation. And we no longer trust public health. You've lied to us time and time again. We will make decisions on behalf of our own children. The most important thing about the executive order, in my opinion, is handing the right back to the parents to make that decision on behalf of their children. Will they or what? Will they not be vaccinated? And if so, then how will they be vaccinated? So this is so important that parents have informed choice.
And Andy, again, finally, for Secretary Kennedy, he still gets trolled on, and even our people in our movement are very hard on him. And I don't think people realize the enormity of the job that he had and what he's achieved.
Imagine the pushback. You've got politicians on both sides of the aisle who are being funded by the pharmaceutical companies, the vaccine manufacturers, for their campaigns. So he's getting pressure from everybody not to act as he's acting. But if it were not for him, we wouldn't have seen the Fauci diaries. We wouldn't have seen the phone records. We wouldn't be in the position we're in now. So cut the guy some slack. He's doing a wonderful job. And what he needs is a second term in the White House to complete the work that he's doing. So bear that in mind. Put politics to one side. This is the issue. This is the issue for us. And so let's give Kennedy another 4 years beyond 2028.
Well, Andy Wakefield, thanks for being on this morning. Congratulations. All your hard work's paid off. We're getting there. I know we've got a lot of work to do, but that is monumental news that we've just had. So thank you for being on this morning. Thank
you very much, Paul. Bye-bye then.
All right, everyone, we're going to go over to Karl Jablonowski, our senior scientist, and we are going to hear a lot of rebuttals coming from him. Good morning, Karl.
Good morning, Polly.
All right, what's first up on today?
Well, in my last science update, we talked about the vitamin K shot and its manufacturer, Pfizer, funding the AAP, which funds the congresswoman and senator calling for mass surveillance of those who declined that medical intervention. Our update was widely and well received, but not by all. Voices for Vaccines had something to say about it, and it was such a stellar failure of communication that we could learn a lot by picking it apart. Voices for Vaccines is notable for having two of the biggest names in vaccines as part of their scientific advisory board. Dr. Stanley Plotkins, who literally wrote the book on vaccines, and Dr. Paul Offit, who made millions co-inventing the rotavirus vaccine and joins Plotkins as a co-author of later versions of the vaccine book. Voices for Vaccines is an offshoot of one of the largest nonprofits in the world, the Task Force for Global Health, which brings in tens and in some years hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Their donors include the CDC, the USAID, which doesn't exist anymore, the World Health Organization, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and most of what would be considered big pharma, notably Pfizer. So let's fact check the fact checkers. First, they spelled my name wrong. It is a name of many pronunciations, but only one spelling. It has 11 letters, and the fact checkers left out 2. The Karl Jablonskis out there are probably confused as to why Paul Offit is mudslinging at them. They describe me as an anti-vaccine activist, which is false. I have never seen a safe vaccine because we have never made a safe vaccine. Progress is not made by chanting safe and effective. Progress is made by admitting our faults and striving for something better. It's worth noting that the vitamin K shot is not a vaccine, despite Voices for Vaccines describing me as an anti-vaccine activist in their fact-checking claim. They claim that I claim, quote, that the shot can cause cancer, infertility, and genetic problems. This is a straw man fallacy. As Martin Luther described it, they assert the very things they assail, or they set up a man of straw whom they may attack. This is one man of straw who has something more to say. I did not say that the shot can cause cancer, infertility, and genetic problems. I said, and they even link the video, quote, the vitamin K shot was never tested for carcinogenicity, genotoxicity, or fertility disruption. Where did I get such a crazy notion? From Pfizer. Their FDA-approved package insert for the vitamin K shot, section 13.1 reads, quote, studies of carcinogenicity, genotoxicity, or impairment of fertility have not been conducted. Voices for Vaccines has just fact-checked their major funder, Pfizer, from an FDA-approved package insert. Let's see how they did. For carcinogenicity, they state that in 1992, a small study suggested that the vitamin K shot might be linked to childhood leukemia. This is true. A small study of 195 children with cancer, Golding et al., showed the odds of cancer doubled for injected vitamin K. Voices for Vaccines said that researchers did larger and better studies. Those studies found no link between the vitamin K shot and childhood cancer. Not quite. The study they link of 685 children found no increase in cancer diagnosed by the 15th birthday. Voices for Vaccines probably didn't read the study they linked, because when the authors looked at the first 6 years of life, the odds of acute lymphoblastic leukemia almost doubled. Both studies have limitations. Even though both studies find significant association with cancer, they can't implicate causation. The thing is, they aren't carcinogenicity studies, where in a laboratory-controlled setting, you could probe whether an ingredient can cause or potentially cause cancer. They are retrospective studies with a whole lot of potential for confounding. This is why Pfizer wrote, and the FDA approved, and I reiterated, that there has never been a carcinogenicity study. Voices for Vaccines contorted my words, and by proxy, FDA approved Pfizer's words to claim that I said that vitamin K shots cause cancer. Voices for Vaccines goes on to fact check genotoxicity, claiming there's, quote, no evidence, and linking a paper. It's not a study that looked for genotoxicity and didn't find anything. It's a policy statement from the AAP that happens to never mention DNA or genetics or genotoxicity. They go on to fact check fertility disruption and once again claim, quote, no evidence, while linking a paper, the same paper. The policy statement also not containing any mention of fertility. In doing so, they blunder badly and ensnare the AAP and the WHO. Quote, there is no evidence that the shot causes infertility. Because of this evidence, the AAP and the WHO continue to recommend the vitamin K shot for all newborns. And I can't believe they strung those words together. There is no evidence because of this evidence. Every scientist in the world knows the absence of evidence does not mean evidence of the absence. Every single one. And you can't point to a policy statement to say otherwise. What is perhaps more telling than what Voices for Vaccines said is what they did not say. In our previous update, I mentioned that the aluminum in the shot is not an ingredient, it's a contamination. And if the measurable contamination exists in a shot destined for most American newborn babies, what other contaminations are getting in? I specifically call out the ingredient, polysorbate 80, that affects biological membranes right before the infant is to receive 250 micrograms of aluminum adjuvant in the AAP recommended Hep B vaccine. Voices for Vaccines doesn't even mention these, not even to claim that there's no evidence and point to a policy paper. I highlighted an alternative to the vitamin K injection, which are the oral drops. Voices for Vaccines actually made a video of their fact-checking that ends with, you deserve the full story before making a decision. Don't you think parents deserve to know that oral vitamin K drops are made available for newborns in most of Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and Canada, and not in the United States? The authors of the leukemia study concluded, quote, since oral vitamin K has major benefits but no obvious adverse effects, this could be the prophylaxis of choice. Yet here we are in the United States, 34 years later, with no FDA-approved oral drops. In this respect, the FDA is the puppet of the AAP, and the AAP is the puppet of Pfizer. Those strings must be cut, because without medical choice, there can be no medical freedom. In other news, Moderna's Emflusiva has just been approved by the FDA. So Moderna ran a series of studies on their mRNA flu vaccine. Now, it's the same platform that they use for their COVID-19 vaccines, except instead of making a spike protein, it tricks human cells into producing hemagglutinin, which is a protein from 3 different influenza viruses. Now, the platform itself has all of the same problems as it did with the COVID-19 vaccines. You can't make a pegylated lipid nanoparticle without the PEG, which is polyethylene glycol, which many people have a reaction to, including anaphylactic reactions. The RNA is stabilized by N1-methylpseudouridine, a chemical compound that is not found in nature. We still don't know how the body disposes of it, but there are some disturbing theories that it doesn't. And the vaccines still cannot be made without DNA contamination that, wrapped in a lipid nanoparticle, still has a free pass through every membrane of your body, and the regulators are still ignoring it. Last December, Moderna filed an application with the FDA. On February 3rd, Dr. Vinay Prasad sent a refusal to file letter to Moderna, citing that the company's failure to perform an adequate and well-controlled clinical trial. It was reversed about 2 weeks later. Last June, the Vaccine and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee voted 9-0 that the benefits outweigh the risk. And it was approved in August with the caveat that Moderna must conduct a phase 4 post-marketing requirement study, which is 2 seasons of the influenza vaccine given to approximately 400,000 people in each of those seasons. That's a total of 800,000 people are about to receive this vaccine. Now, Dr. Marianne Damasi wrote a stellar article in Defender that picked apart how the safety data was cherry-picked. They used specific data from the primary trial, but then they pooled other data to obfuscate the hazard signals. And there are definitely hazard signals. And the odd thing is, it's not Moderna that's cherry-picking this data. It's the FDA. Additionally, the vaccine is noted as having a 26.6% efficacy over conventional vaccines. Now, in the season that they ran the trial, which is 2024 and 25, that season is measured by the CDC as having 56% efficacy for the flu vaccine in that season. And that's tied for the second most efficacious year on record, which you would think would be a really good thing to then get 26.6% efficacy on top of that. However, the CDC, throughout all of their records, rely on a test negative design, which is probably the worst design you could use to measure efficacy. In that same season, Dr. Shrestha from the Cleveland Clinic ran a study on over 53,000 people and determined that the actual flu vaccine efficacy was negative 27%. Negative efficacy. You are more likely to get the flu if you get the flu vaccine. If that is correct, then anything will appear more efficacious than the conventional vaccines. A placebo will appear more efficacious. Notably, Moderna did not have a placebo-controlled trial, which is what Dr. Prasad was alluding to when he sent his refusal to file letter. This vaccine is under review in Canada, Australia, and the European Union, and it is noteworthy that the private equity asset manager Blackstone has invested $750 million into Moderna's flu vaccine program. And a flu vaccine can't be profitable unless it has access to the American market. And unfortunately, this may be an example of whatever large private equity asset managers want, they get.
Sorry, I was on mute, sorry. First of all, I just want to say, what are they called? Voices for Vaccines or anything? Is that what they're called? Okay, don't mess with the Children's Health Defence Science Department. You will not win if you print lies. So you continue to do that. Karl and his team and Brian Hooker, they will break it down and put it right. In fact, anyone who feels like they want to do that, that's what we will do. We will break it down. So you're messing with the wrong people. So stop. That's the first thing. Second, the mRNA flu shot. The big question everyone's talking about, is this going to shed all over us? I mean, I know my chiropractor's already getting ready to put a sign up on his door saying, you know what? Don't bother coming around here if you're going to be doing that.
Right. And ultimately, yes, this mRNA vaccine will shed just like all the other mRNA vaccines shed. And, you know, a cynic may say, well, there's no evidence that they shed. And that is incorrect. There are a lot of excellent examples that it sheds, a lot of excellent examples that it transfers through exosomes. And even, you know, the FDA and the CDC ran empirical Bayesian data mining on the VAERS during the COVID vaccines rollout. And it was, you know, it's going to fail from the beginning because they weren't using the appropriate algorithms. But one thing, they only flagged 3 safety signals for the mRNA vaccines. And it wasn't myocarditis and pericarditis and anaphylaxis, all things that we know are associated with the vaccines. One of those 3 was exposure via breast milk. That is an act of shedding. These mRNA vaccines that are about to be, that have been approved for age 50 and older will absolutely have the potential to shed.
Okay, and that's concerning, especially if you've got a young baby or, I mean, it's concerning for everybody. Nobody wants to get sick like this.
Right. I know. It is highly concerning that the FDA is so willing to look the other way on, you know, the obvious adverse effects that are occurring from this. It is no surprise to me that they're looking the other way on the potential for shedding.
All right. Well, look, Karl, thank you so much for your work. I mean, that was incredible work on the vitamin K, and thank you for telling the truth. And we will continue to do that, everybody. And Karl, for everything you're doing at Children's Health Defence in the Science Department. Thank you for being on this morning.
Well, thank you, Polly.
All right, everyone, we're going to go now to Miriam Ecclefels. We're going to do our back to school project that we're doing throughout the next few weeks. And so here's Miriam. So carrying on with our back to school project that we're doing here at Children's Health Defence, we want to talk about EMR, and who better to do that than our director of the EMR department, Miriam Ecclefels. Good morning, Miriam.
Good morning.
Okay, so everybody is kind of confused about EMR. I mean, not people in our movement. They're really up to date. They follow you, they follow us. But there are people that don't really understand EMR. So why don't we actually just start with, what even does EMR mean?
Well, EMR is short for electromagnetic radiation, and it's a type of radiation that is used for wireless communication. So some people call it RF, radio frequency radiation, some people call it wireless radiation, but it's essentially a specific spectrum of radiation that is used for wireless communication. That's phones, wireless routers, like, you know, what people know as 3G, 4G, 5G. So all of that is sort of like encompassed in the term electromagnetic radiation.
Okay, and so the big question people have got is, how do they know if their child is in danger when they go into the classroom? When they drop them off at school, how do they know that that child is not being severely affected by EMR?
Well, I think the main thing to understand first is that EMR or wireless radiation affects everybody, right? We're exposed to it in the modern day technology world pretty much 24/7. And so our children are, unfortunately, this generation is exposed pretty much from cradle to grave, right? And so it's important for parents to consider when they drop them off at school or when they are at home, like how much radiation they are exposed to. They are exposed to wireless radiation for certain, anywhere they go. I think it's just a question of how much and for how long. And in schools, oftentimes, you know, they use wireless connections for computers, for tablets, for phones. So schools sometimes even have cell towers on school grounds. So oftentimes, schools are very high EMR environments. So it's unfortunate because that's where our children spend large parts of their day.
Yeah, but didn't we do a story once where a 5G antenna or something like that was hidden within the walls of the classroom?
Yeah, so inside the classroom, it's oftentimes just like routers, like wireless routers. And the schools that are equipped with wireless infrastructure oftentimes have an overkill of wireless, right? So they put a router or a receptor in every classroom when one in the school would totally do. And so oftentimes schools now use sort of like one-on-one Chromebooks for children to learn, right? They're provided oftentimes to the school. And so those are then also wireless. And so they sit in this soup, in this toxic soup, essentially all day. And sometimes wireless antennas are installed on rooftops, or they are installed on football fields, or they are installed sort of like, like you said, stealth, right, hidden in corners, mostly outside. So the routers are mostly inside, and then the antennas are mostly outside. And if parents go to school, you can see them everywhere. There is pretty much like not a school building that doesn't have, these rectangle iron receptors on the roof or very close by.
Okay, so why do schools have these big towers? Do they get paid loads of money? Because one woman said to me recently, oh, my school's fine. My child goes to a sweet little Christian school. There's no way that they're going to do that. Well, I live, as you know, Miriam, in between a Christian church, and an elementary school. Both of them have cell towers on their land.
Yes. So schools do that all the time. And schools actually do get money if they allow placement of cell towers on their properties. Churches get money too. And oftentimes it's something that communities are unaware of, because schools are under the pressure to lower costs, right? Because it's oftentimes property taxes that pay for schools. And so the communities generally like it when they pay less property taxes, or when they pay less money for schools. And so school districts try to offset some of that cost by allowing industrial infrastructure. They lease their grounds, their walls, their rooftops, their football fields, their playgrounds, to put this equipment, to put cell towers and 5G poles directly on school grounds, because it offsets their costs. And it's terrible because it exposes our children to RF radiation or EMR or wireless radiation 24/7, right? Whenever they're there.
So how do you know what behavioral symptoms, or what symptoms would you see in your child if your child was becoming poisoned by EMR?
Yes, it's very interesting because everybody reacts a little different. So general symptoms include, headaches, dizziness, difficulties focusing, difficulties sleeping, sort of like hyperactivity, just like a general restlessness. You can see it too if children are on screens too much, that they, have difficult, like their retina changes slightly. And so they need glasses, or they have difficulties, reading on screens or off screens later on. But so sort of like the most typical neurological symptoms are, this headaches, dizziness, sometimes tinnitus, and just difficulties focusing, irritation, and then, having a hard time coming down, for example, going to sleep, particularly if they're exposed to RF radiation or screens close to their bedtime, or close to the time when they are supposed to, be calm and rest. Because it changes the melatonin production. It signals to the brain, that it's day when it's night. And there's all of these different elements that are associated with screen time and RF exposure.
Yeah, so in this day and age, 2026, kids are going back to school. They've got their smartwatches on, they've got their Aura rings on, they've got their cell phones, they've got all their gadgets, and they're walking on into a school where they're going to be fried, bottom line.
Right. Yeah. And
so what do we do as parents?
I mean, limit the gadgets, right? We recommend generally limit the amount of devices that you give to your children. Do they really need an Apple Watch and an Oura Ring and a phone and an iPad and a laptop, right? And do they need to carry all of that on their body all the time? No, they don't. The second recommendation we give to parents is limit the time. because exposure to RF radiation or EMR is similar to other toxic exposures. It's cumulative and it affects people over time. And so the more radiation you expose your child to, the sooner and the heavier the symptoms are going to be. It solicits a biological response in everybody. It's just that people expose, have different effects at different times. And so limit the amount of devices, limit the time that your child spends on it. So if you know that they are exposed in school for 8 hours, that they work on laptops, that they work on wireless laptops, don't also give them a lot of screen time at home, right? Try to reduce the wireless exposure at home where you can. Unplug your router, like they don't charge and leave their phones next to their bed, like put the devices in a different room, put them on airplane mode when they're not in use, and give your child's body a time to detox and to reset. Also, if you can advocate in schools for wired connections, absolutely do so. We have a terrific back to school toolkit on our website with presentations and flyers that you can give to a school board or to a principal. There are terrific resources out there. And so we encourage parents to use those and to advocate. And a lot of schools actually across the nations are banning phones altogether from schools because they are not conducive to learning and to a healthy learning and collegial environment.
And this is all great when you've got a child that's young and you can sort of semi-control them. But the teenagers are where the issue comes in. We hear over and over again. I spoke to a friend recently, they had banned cell phones at school and the child was calling his parents from another cell phone. They will have burner phones, whatever that is, in the school. So these kids are super clever. They know how to get around it. So it's not necessarily working, but just want to go back to the things that people wear. We forgot earpods, and a mother was telling me recently that her child said he would rather leave the household than give up his AirPods.
That's terrible. It's sort of like consistent with what we know about the brain science of screen addiction and addiction to technology, right? Children, unfortunately, get hooked to technology and to the use and convenience of technology very, very quickly. And so it's important that if you do have younger children, that you delay exposure to smartphones and other wireless devices for as long as possible, right? Particularly, if your child exhibits any sort of like addictive behavior to smartphones, to video games, to gadgets, try to make a stop while you still can. Now, if you do have teenagers, it is really, really hard to get them used to the thought that the technology that they love so much could be harmful to them. But I think that parents and us as a society together, we need to form communities and we need to form a movement that treats technology slightly different, because there's also a lot of peer pressure going on for children right in school if they're the only ones without a phone or if they're the only ones without without AirPods. And so I think that communities need to really start having hard conversations and rethinking how we as adults and our children interact with technology.
All right, so what do you recommend? Say I'm a young mum and I've been listening to you. I'm going to put some ideas out here. Every single group, your class group has like a group, doesn't it, on Facebook or wherever it may. I don't know how people communicate these days. So I would personally get on there and say, who's interested in investigating more about it? Get together with a group. It's always easier in a group. And then your toolkit, talk to us about. So I've got my group of people that say, yeah, we're really interested. We don't know anything about it. We go to the toolkit and what do we find there?
So the toolkit has both flyers and information on the health impact of RF radiation, because I think it's good for people to have a foundation, and that goes for voluntary and involuntary exposure to radiation. So the stuff that you can control, phones, routers, that kind of stuff, but then also like cell towers and fixed wireless infrastructure. There are also a lot of resources out there that deal with screens and screen addiction. Screenstrong.org has amazing resources on the entire neuroscience behind screens and screen addictions and why they're essentially bad. So I encourage everyone to first learn sort of like in a small group or even by themselves. And then, get active, like talk to your school boards, talk to your principal, talk to your teacher about alternatives. Safer alternatives are available. Even tablets, for example, content can be downloaded and then devices can be used wirelessly. Computers can be hardwired. Wireless routers can be reduced. They can be reduced in power and they can be reduced in the amount of routers that are in school. And, of course, stay vigilant when cell towers are proposed on school grounds or close to schools, because the school actually does not have to lease their land. And if they hear from parents early on that is not a desired outcome for that school, then oftentimes parents are able to fend off unwanted fixed wireless infrastructure, such as cell towers or 5G poles.
So say my group of people, we've done some research, we've looked at your toolkit, we followed you on EMR, and we get in front of the school board and they say, show us the science. Do we have the science to show that the EMR is affecting our children in school?
Absolutely. So in the 704 No More toolkit that I'm hoping we can link to this show, all of the presentations and the speaker's notes that we encourage parents to give before a school board are sort of like accompanied by an explanatory document that links to our webpage, where you have all of the hyperlinks. It links to every study on the harms of EMR. It links to every article that has been published. It links to terrific resources, so that if someone really wants to take the deep dive and read the studies and dive into the science, it's all there. And I mean, we have a mountain of scientific evidence by now that shows that wireless radiation affects the human body negatively, particularly children who absorb more radiation than adults. And it's not a question anymore of like, oh, we don't know if this stuff is harmful. No, this stuff is harmful. And we have tens of thousands of studies to show it. They are on our website. They are linked to the toolkit. We have PDF summaries. So the information is out there. Whether people want to hear it or not is a different question.
Of course. Miriam, how can people follow the EMR department at Children's Health Defense?
Yeah, so we are on all major social media platforms at Stop 5G Near Me and at 704 No More. So you can find us on Facebook, X, Instagram at Stop 5G Near Me or at 704 No More. We also encourage people to sign up for our monthly newsletter at 704nomore.org. There is a subscribe button at the bottom of the website. If you punch in your email there, you'll be added to an email list, and we'll send out pertinent information on the 704 No More initiative, as well as all of our monthly campaigns that educate and advocate around the safer use of technology.
Yeah, and viewers, it is really important you do follow them, because times are changing so fast. And as soon as there's new news or updates or breaking science on this issue, it will be posted on social media. So please do follow our EMR department. Miriam Eckefels, thanks so much for being on this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
The power we have is the truth.
This is the nation's leading conference.
It's so empowering to be joining together and working for our children.
Coming to CHD was the best decision that I've made probably all year.
It is a new day when senators and representatives want to associate themselves with Children's Health Defense. Why? We're telling the truth, and they know that. And because people are listening to us, and they know that.
To me, health on a political level is the most important subject. We need to raise a healthy generation.
We, the people, are waking up. We are taking back the system.
The federal government's job is not to ensure the stable legal risk for vaccine manufacturers.
Remember, we're a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I can't say it any better.
We can live to see a better day where people will be healthier and where government and corporations will be forced to be more responsible.
You can't be a decent human being and know what we have now come to learn and turn your back on it and close your eyes.
We're live on. Okay, I'm gonna have to turn the air conditioner because it's so noisy. I'm so sorry. We're gonna get boiling hot. You ready? Yeah. Here we go. All right. So this is a story about you, isn't it? What's your name?
Mary.
Mary, and you're 20 years old.
Yes.
And your mum.
Yes.
Okay. And so you, Mary, got injured by the MMR when you were a little girl.
Yeah.
Okay, I think Mum's going to have to tell a story because I don't think you're going to remember much of it.
Mary is my second born out of 3 children. And we were seeing a pediatrician who had 6 children and did not vaccinate any of his children. And I was reading about things. My firstborn was born in 1994. Mary was born in 96. And I was reading things, raising concerns, and he would never tell me why he did not vaccinate his children. Yet it was as if his next meal depended upon vaccinating all of his patients.
Wait, so he did not vaccinate his children?
Correct.
How did you know he didn't vaccinate his children?
Because he told me, and I was also in a prayer group with his wife, and I would ask her, and she would not tell me why.
But he pushed vaccines on his patients?
Yes, he did.
That's disgraceful. And he's a Christian?
Yes.
That's disgraceful.
Yes. Never ever tell me why, and I
tried
100 different ways to find out. And when Mary received the first sets of vaccinations, I noticed she just got more withdrawn. She got more quiet. And at 13 months, she had the MMR, and to that point, she was progressing ahead of schedule. She was articulating. We had the mama dada. She was walking fine. She was perfect, and she had the MMR.
Just the MMR?
I don't know if there were any other vaccines given that day or not, but when I noticed that at the 3 months, 6 months, isn't there 9 month shots, that she was getting more quiet, then I started saying I don't want her getting all of these shots in one day. So I started separating them, which put the practice into a tizzy that they would see me more than once to vaccinate her. But so after the MMR at 13 months, then her tongue hung in her mouth like that, and there was no more articulation. She lost what words she was saying. She lost them again, more withdrawn. Her arm hung, like she had one side that was fine, but the other one just hung. And so with no progression, I started asking for speech therapy referrals, and I was told I was a crazy mom.
How old is she now at this point when you're asking for speech?
Within months after that.
So sort of, because she had this vaccine when she was 13 months,
13 months,
same as
yes.
Billy, and then
so I was written up as crazy. I was told it was my son's fault because he was very verbal. There was nothing wrong with her.
I love that. Your son is so verbal. She does not have a chance to speak.
Exactly.
It's all his fault.
Yes.
What kind of a doctor does that?
Right. A doctor with 6 children who doesn't vaccinate his
What
own.
a sicko. I hope is he still practicing
Yes,
now?
he is.
Shame on him.
I looked him up because I was thinking about writing him. So, but finally, at the 18-month point, I got a referral for speech therapy. And she would learn a new word and lose one. So if she could say moo, and then she learned 2, she lost moo. She learned 2, and then
Wait,
so
she what? She learnt moo, lost moo, learnt 2.
Oh no! So for
sounds like Dr. Zeus,
right? So like every word, she could only have a vocabulary of 1 or 2 words. We weren't building. She could only just hold on to 1 or 2 words at a time.
Right.
And so the language all became. We just had to learn what the articulation meant.
Right.
The receptive skills were still there, but the articulation was gone.
And were you, at this point, are you done with your doctor, or are you going back in?
He's still the pediatrician. We're military, and
is he a military pediatrician?
No, because I had.
They want his name.
Who wants his name?
The people want to know who it is because they don't want to go there. They don't want to go to a pediatrician where he's being so deceitful. I've asked people. It's up to you.
Bill is his first name. It's escaping me right now. Bill is his first name. He's in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Dr. Bill something in something
in Shreveport, Louisiana with Highland.
Stay away, people.
Yeah. So we got the speech therapy referral, and again, so she could learn 1 or 2 words, but that was about all her vocabulary could hold. That time we received a transfer to Dayton, Ohio to Wright-Patterson because she was, the problems that she was having, we were able to continue care off base. And we started working with a speech therapist who was also trained in brain gym. It's a kinesiology program where if you're doing homolateral and cross-lateral movements, the brain integrates more. So she was able to then build a vocabulary, but then seizures started. So we went to a neurologist in Cincinnati who I told him at that point, I said, this all happened after the MMR. He told me that I was wrong. He wrote a 1-page letter up about me being crazy, but at the end of it said that she was not to be vaccinated any further, but the vaccines didn't cause the problem.
No, that makes sense.
So we treated the seizures with dietary change, a lot of craniosacral. She was in speech therapy until 6-7 years old, and then had physical therapy and occupational therapy as well. So we used a naturopath, physician, a lot of alternative medicine.
You've got to be grateful that you're not a baby now going through this with all the vaccines and all the psychotropic drugs out there, because you would be massively experimented on right now.
Mm-hmm.
When we had nothing, you're the same age, you're in between my Toby and my Bill, and we had nothing like they have now with the vaccines or the psychotropic drugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's sick what these babies go through now. Mm-hmm. So, have you got rid of these seizures?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to be careful about what you eat, or are you just living a normal life right now?
I still have to be careful with what I eat, but I don't think the diet triggers, because I haven't had seizures in...
It's been a long time, but it was not horrific. It was seizures, but there were seizures which I attribute to that MMR that happened.
Mm-hmm. Now, and so are you at a private public school, or are you homeschooled?
I'm in college.
But were you in school?
Yeah.
And up until 10th grade because of Lyme disease.
Okay, carry on with your story. I think I've gone too far, so I was just interested to talk. We'll talk about it again. Keep going.
Then in elementary school, she was in a very moldy building, and we were just told she's an allergic kid. Got into 10th grade and just too sick to continue in school. We were given a fibromyalgia diagnosis. Then went back to the naturopath and got an accurate diagnosis of Lyme disease. And so she's graduated with her graduating class in 2015, but had a 2-year medical leave of absence dealing with the cascade of issues from Lyme disease, and is now in college. Just started college this week.
And what are you doing?
Biology or psychology.
Did you hear that, trolls? Biology. I don't think we got any today, which is a shame. All right now, biology. And what is your dream profession?
Physical therapy or chiropractic.
Good for you. You're on the right track. You're going to be absolutely fine. You've picked really good professions.
Yep.
And you know now that no matter what, whether it's smallpox or whatever they want to say, the Ebola outbreak that's going to happen, and that we will have to mandate vaccines, what are you going to do?
I'm not going to vaccinate.
You're going to karate chop. I think all young girls and boys should be going for massive self-defense lessons in how to protect themselves.
The chiropractic school, they do not have a vaccine requirement. MD or DO schools require vaccines. And my son is on the path for an MD or DO school, and I was calling them and saying, I want a waiver for my son. And I was berated by a couple medical schools saying, We follow the CDC guidelines. There's nothing wrong with vaccines.
Oh, bloody hell. That's why you need to not have your son. You got your son. No. Can't be a doctor and you can't join the military. You're going to find something else to do until they sort their vaccine policies out. Chiropractor's a great job. You get to heal people.
Yeah.
It's all holistic. It's all wonderful. Chiropractors put right what the medical doctors do wrong. That's their job.
That's true.
Wow. Okay, now advice. Both of you, give advice to young parents right now. You can give advice to your age group because there'll be lots that are about to go for their being told that they want to get the contraceptive pill, they have to go and have the Gardasil HPV vaccine or whatever. What do you say? How do you say no?
I mean, just keep asking questions, and if it doesn't feel right to you, don't do it. You don't have to do it, most likely.
Get out.
Be well read. As a young adult, there's plenty of websites that you can read the information and understand that it's very hard to reverse the side effects, damage of a vaccine. Mary is a miracle.
Mary, you're a miracle.
So.
Well, also they didn't give her as much as they give the 13-month-old now.
Right. And then when I had
she stood a chance.
Yeah, when I had my third child, this 2.5 years after Mary, there was no arguing with me that her vaccines would be staggered. Now I wouldn't vaccinate her at all, but my youngest, her vaccines are staggered. I have titers run on all of them. They have do not vaccinate orders on the kids. So, we're smarter now to know about do they have the methylation defect, to support with the doctor saying, please write this letter. Here's our genetic information that we have. Just don't vaccinate.
No, there's no, seriously.
Just be wise.
Seriously, guys, that's the best advice. We can sugarcoat this or say it any way you want to be politically correct. Bottom line, don't do it. The unvaccinated are so superiorly more healthy than the vaccinated.
Right, and it's easier then to be healthy because you haven't compromised the immune system with.
Yeah, I just realised that YouTube is the most censored between Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. YouTube's the most censored. Shame on you, shareholders of YouTube. Anything else you want to add, guys? When you have babies, you're going to vaccinate them?
No, I don't plan on.
No, well then you'll have a very healthy life and a very happy life. It's as simple as that. Well, thank you so much.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.